People are trying to solve the password issue, the idea we will want to remember lots of passwords to access lots of accounts, lots of portals. What's not really going away is the fact we've still got lots of accounts and lots of portals, and we have to go to lots of places to get lots of information. Account fatigue might be the phrase you'd use with that if you're using password fatigue for the other. We have all become very used to the fact that when we deal with goods and service providers, I suppose there's actually almost an expectation these days that they're going to give us somewhere that we can go to log in. And of course, that's a valuable facility. The trouble being, unfortunately, that when we all deal with so many different companies and they all very kindly provide us access to those facilities, you end up with a very big long list of logins and therefore a requirement to create a password, a safe password, one would hope, that will enable you to access those logins and those systems. So password fatigue is when you've got the problem of trying to maintain a record of all of those different access codes, because of course it's not a great idea to just use one password across lots and lots of systems. And that leaves you vulnerable to the fact that if someone were to find out your password, they'd gain access to everything. There was a time when the way people delivered information to us was in a very nice, uniform way. It feels a bit bizarre to talk about it, but we've got this thing called a letterbox, and people would send things through our letterbox and they'd land on the welcome mat inside our homes, and it would all be there for us, everything in one place. Now, of course, that's not particularly ecological, not necessarily particularly secure, and sadly not necessarily particularly expedient these days. All sorts of problems associated with suppliers in that sector. And as a consequence, people have been trying to digitize that delivery, and in most cases, they provide us with a portal. So we end up with, in some cases, hundreds of portals that we need to visit to go and collect that information. And those portals are all in different places. They're provided by different companies. So apart from password fatigue, the point about having lots of passwords to access lots of those accounts, there's also account fatigue. You have to go to lots of different places to collate lots of different information to give you a broader picture. And that in itself has now become a problem. So if you look online and try to size the problem of accounts that we all hold online, you'll find all sorts of statistics. It's quite hard to get a bearing. But one statistic that sticks in my mind, and I don't think it's got any better, is that it's reported that we each have around 118 different logons, different passwords, different sites to visit from our goods and service providers. That seems like a high number until you actually start to think about it. You think about the different systems you use for viewing television and your music and your shopping and your air miles and your gas, your electric, your phone. It goes on and on. So there's absolutely no question that the problem has become a significant one for all of us. The truth is that when you're given access to a portal, having gone through the pain of registering in the first place, trying to be prudent about setting the right username and password, you're then called upon to recall all that information and then try to understand the navigation of that supplier's portal itself in order to find that document that you needed very urgently. That's a really frustrating experience, and it's one that has got to be solved. In our interactions with the larger companies, there is now very much an acceptance that customers need choice. They need to be able to determine their preferred communication method. And it may well be that they are interacting with that company in a lot of different ways, subject to the nature of the interaction. Portals can be very useful to carry a historic record of documents and information where there's a need to interact with that. And of course, something like email simply doesn't support that. It's very good for live and expedient communication, accelerating processes. But at the end of the day, it's good to have a record of what you've dealt with a company in a portal. And certainly in our interactions, we're finding now that that blended approach is recognized as being essential. it's not uncommon for consumers to choose to share a password across multiple portals to make it more convenient for them. Of course, we try and advocate, people using password reminder systems and using the appropriate levels of security to access those systems in their own right. But the reality is, look, people will probably grade the degree of security that's required with a portal and possibly share a password across ones which are less sensitive than others, whether that's something the supplier, the provider of the portal likes or not. And I guess what that does do then is it drives the security level for that provider down to the lowest common denominator, and therein lies a challenge. You're no longer, if you provide a portal, necessarily in control of your own security when your customers are demanding simplicity, and that's simply not the case when you've got to remember 118 passwords. Let's imagine just for a moment how the security model might apply for a piece of very sensitive information. As a supplier of that information, I might choose to place it on the portal and ask my user to log in to pick it up. That user might well be using the password. There are some very low levels of security exercised by individuals who just want the convenience of being able to get into information. Unfortunately, that means that the party that deposited that information is now exposing the client, never intentionally, but is gating access to very sensitive data with a very poor security measure. The alternative might be they send that email to that customer, and in that case, they send them a two-factor authentication code to their mobile. There's a massive difference between the security levels with those two user cases. The same information reaches the customer very quickly, in fact quicker. The sender can govern the level of security that they're applying to that communication, and they have not in any way created any higher friction, but they've certainly kept the bar up on security. I think for the foreseeable future, you can be assured that portals are going to continue to exist. And certainly that will be the case where there is an interaction, a live interaction required, maybe against a tool set or where someone's trying to access historical documents. In the meantime, there is this whole piece around how quickly you can communicate with someone and provide information to them right in front of their eyeballs immediately and allow them to, return the favor and send information back. And therefore, instant messaging and email and those other mediums are going to also persist. I can see a point in the future, and I don't think it's too far away, where we will find some form of universal either storage or some form of capabilities at a mobile app level, but very likely that will drive a higher level of engagement by affording the consumer convenience of having everything in one place.